Hello once again. I would like to welcome everybody, especially all those from the Munro family to Moree Boomerangs Oval. I'd like everybody who's able to please stand. Could everybody please be seated? Thank you. We all right? Everything's set to go. Once again, Yama, good morning, everybody. My name is Harry Phillip Hall. It's my privilege to be your Master of Ceremonies today to farewell my great mate and uncle, Lowell Munro Sr. Before we proceed, I'd like to make some acknowledgement. I'd like to welcome the following guests to the ceremony: the Honourable Adam Marshall, MP, representing the Premier of New South Wales, Minister for Agriculture in Western New South Wales, and the Minister for the Northern Tablelands. The Honourable Linda Burney, MP, Shadow Minister for Families and Services, Social Services, Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, and Councillor Katrina Humphries, Mayor of Moree Plains Shire Council. And I would also acknowledge those dignitaries watching live today, which is Her Excellency the Governor of Her Excellency the Honourable, all these leery names these fellows got, the Honourable Margaret Beazley, Governor of New South Wales, and Mr Dennis Wilson, sorry about that, Governor, the Honourable, the other dignitaries is the Honourable Governor-General, Commonwealth of Australia, His Excellency the Honourable David Hurley, Professor the Honourable Dame Michelle Bashir, former Governor of New South Wales, Mr David Harris, Shadow Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Treaty, and also represented New South Wales Leader of the Opposition, and also the Perkins family acknowledgement. I'd now like to proceed, and as we always do, is welcome to country, and we'd like to call on Aunty Edna now to perform the service to welcome to country. Take a deep breath. You're right.
I thank you all for being here today as we prepare for this important business. I welcome all elders and guests here today, and on behalf of the family and people, I welcome you to Gomeroi country. Whether you travelled near or far, I ask the spirits of my ancestors to look over and protect these people whilst they are here on Gomeroi country. Is that another one? I ask the spirits of my ancestors to allow them safe passage to and from this place. Thank you. Is that it?
Naya Morba, Yindangu, Yanai, Nua, Yuraidana, Yani, Ugamadana, Waragilgu, Garabalba, Dagangu, Nay. Winigalana Naya, Waima, Nay, Ganangu, Abala, Dian, Ganangu, Nuaga, Yuraldana, Bala, Diangu, Nay, Bala, Marigu, Nay, Galbier, Nay, Niangu, Donda, Gomaragu. Nia Dui Marng, Gunay, Dayaldana, Nambala, Bornbala, Gananga, Ganangaba, Wan, Gigalana, Donda, Noa, Waran, Ganbag, Dian, Gu, Nay. Thank you.
Thank you, Aunty Edna and Kip. What we're going to do is move on now to introduce a few of Uncle Lyle's closest friends and colleagues that pay tribute to his incredible legacy. Can I first of all call on Uncle Ozzie Cruz? This man has also served his time and a very close friend to Lyle during the 60s and the 70s. And I'd call him now to say a few words on behalf of his mob as well.
Yeah. Folks, what a great tribute to a great warrior. Life touches life. None of us live at Ireland. And Lyle, alongside of his deceased lovely wife, Carmine, Together their lives have touched the lives of so many people, from the immediate family to the extended family, to community, local and state, national and international. That's a wonderful tribute. We'll hear a lot about that when Lolly Mo presents the eulogy. But for now, as we prepare to lovingly and tenderly lay his body to rest, we have fond memories of what took place over the years. I first met Lyle when we were both elected to the New South Wales Aboriginal Advisory Council. And for you to really get a picture of what things took place, you can't help but talk politically sometimes. Even in a funeral situation like this, I know it's inappropriate, but the fact is that back there, when we first were elected to the Advisory Council, this country was seeping in racism. And we both came through those periods of incredible racism. I can remember as a boy, young boy, very young boy, if I walked into a shop, I knew I wouldn't be served until everybody else was served because I was Aboriginal. That was the culture of those days. And to get an idea then of the great tribute that this man's made, you would have to really know some of the history of those things that took place. And so then, in my message, I border on a lot of political stuff too. And, you know, the Bible says to me that so shall a man leave his father and his mother, he shall cleave to his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. That means a man and a woman, when they come together in their marriage, become so close to each other. The intensity of the love, they feel the hurt of each other. And, you know, when Lyle lost his lovely wife, part of him died too as well. And that's the way it is with marriage and relationship. And that's the way that the Bible describes it. Lyle and Carmine knew the lovely strength that they had with each other, but they also knew the strength of the Almighty God in their marriage. As we lovingly, tenderly prepare for the burial today, we know that he'll be resting alongside of his beautiful wife, Carmine. And so we honour this great warrior as we share the sense of loss with the family. And they're the ones that would be hurting the most right at this moment. I know there's a big hole in our community, but the family, immediate, with Lolly Mo and all the others, you know, there's an incredible hurt there. And so we gather together, as all Koris always do. In a funeral, it's our culture, when we all come together and we share the hurt of each other. And I commend the Word of God, which I believe is fitting for my brother Lyle. And it just simply says this: greater love has no man than a man lay down his life for his friends. And it doesn't mean that a man commits suicide. It means that he's put all his heart and energy into working for the best interests of his people, of his friends. And that was Lyle. And, you know, the prejudice that was in this country was something that affected everyone. And I knew, every time I'd go to Canberra, I'd go in and see Izzy at the embassy. And I'd say, thank you, sister, for sitting here for us people of New South Wales. Thank you for showing this government that we are aliens in our own country. And so it is that was great love for Isabella. She sat there in that embassy for 40 years. What a beautiful contribution she made to our people's interests. And so it is, and as I said, I'm completely aware that you shouldn't be talking to politics in this situation, but you can't get away from it when you have a man that is fighting for the rights of people for so long. And, you know, in the Uluru Statement, we were looking for truth and justice. That's all we wanted, truth and justice to take place in this country. And even as late as just a few weeks ago, Ken Wyatt wanted to raise the issue of closing the gap. And the Prime Minister said, no, that'll take place later on. How can the government be like that? How can they be so hard? And when I hear things like that, what jumps into my mind is there's a policy that's implemented in this country that seeps with genocide. Genocide. Genocide means destruction of culture. And that's what Lyle fought against all these years, both he and I and others that were involved. And there's so many people that you don't want to use names, but I just did know that and understood that there were people from all walks coming together to make this world a better place for Aboriginal people to live. And as we listen to the eulogy, we'll hear that today. When I read the scripture, and I've been reading it now 50 years, it says to me that the Lord sees not as man sees. God doesn't see as you see. For man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. He saw the heart of the great warrior, Lyle. He saw his heart, and he knew that his heart was always fixed on the betterment of our people. And so as we grieve today, we grieve with all those things, knowing that full well. The Bible says, let not your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Who's the name of your God? Bayami. In my country is Mirial. Up in the mid-country in the Pinjara people is Mama Kurumpa. He's the same creator that created the whole earth. And the scripture says that God has made men of one blood. There's no difference. He didn't see differences in people. There's a white man that saw and invented the caste system, the lower caste of Aboriginal people and the higher class of European. But within the midst of all of that, there are so many beautiful European people that stood with us, that walked the bridge, stood with us in rallies and protests that this world needs to be a better place for our people. And when Lyle took his position up in the Advisory Council, we were advising the government because the Aboriginal Protection Board had finished its usefulness, really, in the terrible things that it's done to our people. But a minister was now taking the role of Aboriginal Affairs. And so that we were meeting directly with the minister, talking about these issues that were so detrimental to our people. And I was always forthright. He was always forthright in the things that needed to be done. And when we worked together, we worked with 9 Aboriginal people in that first body. And that first body served for 13 years, advising the state government, and changes were being made, but not the type of changes that would bring about a whole settlement to this country. Few people know that the Wiradjuri country was the place that was first invaded by the powers that be. Did you know that Aboriginal people that lived in this country were starving? Did you know the reason why they were starving? They were starving because large tracts of Wiradjuri land was the first to be given away to settlers, to convicts who would fulfill their term of office, or whatever it was. They were given land. And in that first instance, we have written record of it, how that people were starving. And those people that were starving decided to war against the powers that be. The Wiradjuri rose up and started a fight. Then they went to the governor, and the governor said, "Governor, we've got to do something about these natives. They're killing us." And then the governor made a ruling, declared a state of emergency in a Wiradjuri country. Did you know that? Did you know that they decided then to make a trap for the Wiradjuri people? They would put food out for the people to come, put it within gunshot, was a record written. And when they found out, the women and children came. The warriors didn't come. The documents that we have in our possession says they will grow up to be a menace anyhow. Take them out. Now those sort of things is what Lyle stood for. He was standing for the massacres, for the terrible massacres that took place in history. And we should never forget that. A lot of our people paid with, there's blood in this land. A lot of people right across Australia. And somehow the government has to come to terms with that. They have to come to terms with it. His life was not in vain. They have to come to terms with it and give meaning and purpose to the death of this great warrior. I believe he come from Tingha. And my wife, my second wife that I married, has done a thesis on gum leaf playing. And she tells me that there was a good gum leaf player there in Tingha. And, and so I, Lyle was an incredible man. I remember once we were in a big meeting. I don't know whether Ernie was with us at the time, but we were in a big meeting. And I don't know who was speaking, but Lyle started whistling the old Rugged Cross. And I thought, wow, this man, he knows the master. So I'm going to attempt to play that tune. Rest in peace, my brother. God bless you. Stay safe.
The next speaker I'd like to call upon is a young man that served his time. This bloke behind me is going to talk now. It's like me. I was my good friend's PA. He trained my brain from a very young age and guided me through the system. And the young bloke behind me, he'd done the same thing. He was running the land rights unit of the old NAC in those days, back in the 70s. And you want to reflect on those times now. Lyle as a boss, we're on our good baby today. Call on Michael Giller Anderson.
Yelling in the Goldie. Lamanga. Na English, Balanga. Yeah, where do you start? Lyle was not just an ordinary person. He was someone who told me a story when I first started getting involved as a young fella, same as Philip's dad. They said to me, if you're going to get involved in Aboriginal affairs, understand you're not going to have any friends. Also, understand that when you look around, those who call you a friend are not going to be behind you when you're in trouble. And that gelled very well with me, because my dad always said, when I came home from Canberra and they saw us on TV leading land rights marches, people like Paul Coe, Gary Foley, Gary Williams, etc. And my dad said, to add insult to what I was being told by these men, that you got the greatest problem is our people are the most jealous people in the world. Mistrust and distrust is part of our society because these white fellas mixed us all up, stole things from us. And unfortunately, they use the old Roman ethos of divide and rule and conquer. And so, like the Romans used to say, when you read their historical documents and when they invaded Rome, one of the things that they said was, why lose a man when we can use their own kind against them? And that's what they've done to us. This man told me that. But one of the things he said, I was a big drinker back in my younger days, just before I got married and when I was getting married. And he said, we were all down the mission down here, and he said, it was my turn to go uptown and get the sly grog, bring it back down to the camp. And he said, no, I went, and he said, it was raining. And it just that, it was interesting that this clouds are overhead. And he said to me, I kept trying to get up that bank on the other side of the Meai. He said, I kept sliding down, because he said, I was after drunk. He said, and anyway, he said, there's this man put his hand down and pulled me up. And he said, when he pulled me up, he looked at me and he said, I'd never seen this man before in my life. He said, the man said, why don't you black fellas stop drinking? You got to fight the fight, sober up, and get on with that fight and save your people. I heard two other men tell me that same story. One of them just finished talking. And so he said, the commitment is that it's a lifetime commitment when you get involved. And unfortunately, like his brother from Walgett, Harry Hall, like the family here, Munro, the Halls couldn't get a job in Walgett because they dared to fight and stand their ground. Same thing happened here. And so what we have to do is we have to understand that the legacy we have, if we dare to fight and dare to struggle, the enemy is not only in front of us, but they're all around us. I think the greatest thing that the NAC and other Aboriginal organisations like that did was that they brought people together and made it possible for our people to speak as one. It was the first time. But unfortunately, there were a lot of enemies. And I remember him saying to me, he said, I'm going to employ Philip Hall. I said, what? He said, I'm going to bring Philip on. He said, I want to bring Philip on simply because I want him to watch a little bally-headed white man that's running around this country. And I said, who's that little bally-headed white man? He said, his name is Nugget Coombs. And I said, so what was to go? He said, well, this man is running around organising things behind our backs while we're trying to perform a program here and advise government on policies, and you've got a little white man running around telling the state governments and working mining companies and other people against the interest of our people. He said, so I want Philip to get on an aeroplane, wherever he goes, I want Philip behind him. I said, that's a good idea. So Philip gets on an aeroplane. After 2 trips, he's gone to Perth, he's gone to Darwin. Philip comes back into the office and he says to the old fella, it's no good, mate. This is not going to work. Why isn't it going to work, Philip? He said, because Nugget Coombs sits in first class and he's talking to them white fellas in the aeroplane in first class. I'm sitting back here in the passengers, back here in the second class. So the old fella changed the rules and he said, no, Philip, you have to sit in first class so you get closer to that little man. So the old fella, he really understood what was going on. and he didn't pull any punches. And he kept talking about racism. He said, our greatest problem is dealing with racism which is institutionalised. It's inside the government. It's inside the administration. It's riddled with racism. You know, and I saw that coming in here this morning. When I came across the Meai Bridge over here, I looked to my left and there's an Aboriginal flag there flying at half-mast. I looked to my right-hand side and there's the Australian and New South Wales flags and the Maurice Plains Shire flag flying full-mast. That's subtle racism. That's racism at its best. They don't even have the decency when we have a state funeral and the state government, the Commonwealth government and the Maurice Shire Council don't even put their flags at half-mast, and they call this a state funeral for a man that's earned his stripes. And I find that very insulting for us. Just another story about that people don't know about what Lyle's achieved. One of the great things was, in 1979, they had a protest on Capitol Hill. When they were sitting on Capitol Hill, they sent down a message, and between them, there was a bloke called Kevin Gilbert, and they penned a letter to Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser and said, we need to settle our differences, and we call upon you to negotiate a treaty with us. And so what happened was that the Fraser government wrote a letter back to Capitol Hill and then advising them that, yes, we will enter into a treaty, but we will only negotiate with the elected body, the Aboriginal body called the National Aboriginal Conference. When they came to the National Aboriginal Conference, the National Aboriginal Conference said, we will only negotiate a treaty on two conditions. One, Aboriginal land rights. Our property rights have never been lost. You people killed and then you stole it. And you benefited from the proceeds of a crime. And you continue to benefit from the proceeds of crime. The second one was, we were sovereign people and our people made the decisions over everything on our country. And you people just come in and swamped us with the might of the gun. And so he said, sovereignty has never been ceded. So if you negotiate, if you agree that they shall be the preconditions to us entering into a treaty, well, then we'll talk to you. And so I came on board and he said to me, they said to me, go around the world and learn about treaties. Tell us what the pitfalls are. And I did. And when I came home, I kept saying to them, these fellas are not going to be able to do it, the Australian government. And he asked me why, and I said, well, when I was in England, a couple of English lords said to me, you're wasting your time talking to the Australians because they're only colonialist. The Queen of England still has the power over Australia because Australia has no sovereignty of its own. Australia operates under the Queen of England's sovereignty. The Crown in England owns this country. These fellas here are just puppets. They are puppets to the Crown of England. And we want to negotiate with thieves. Why would we want to negotiate with thieves? And this is what he was saying to me. Learn what these people have done. Learn what they're doing to us and tell us where the wrongs are going on. And we only have to look around this country. And the last conversation I had, which was some time ago, because I didn't like seeing him in the state, but he simply said to me, the fight hasn't even started yet. He said, but the problem is our young people don't know what we've done. Our young people don't know where we've been. Our young people are not there fighting the fight that we should, simply because we left them behind. And that's one of our mistakes, was that we didn't bring them along with us. And he said, so keep that fight going. And we must maintain the rage. And of course, I wear this thing here, Grand Theft Australia, 26th of January. And the beauty is, you know, Now I think the white Australians must be getting a bit worried because they see a lot of Chinamen marching with us now in Sydney. Yeah. And I think they have reason to be concerned. And in parting, all I can say is I remember a meeting that we had. I did a briefing paper for them when they met with the Prime Minister and Cabinet. The National Aboriginal Conference, under the chairmanship of Lyle Munro, were the only Aboriginal body of people who ever met face to face with the Cabinet, full Cabinet of the Australian Government in Canberra. And Lyle chaired that meeting, and he was sitting there, and on the one side were all these government ministers. And little Johnny Howard was the treasurer at the time. And Malcolm Fraser sitting straight opposite Lyle. And he said to Lyle, he said, "I've got a bit of a concern, you know." He said, "My concern is that if we agree, we have to do a preamble, a precondition agreement." And he said, part of that agreement is going to be that we as the national government representing the whites of Australia, the rest of Australia's, he said, we have to sign an agreement to say we recognise your sovereignty. He said, and when we sign that document, we then have to pass it over to you to sign it over so that we're going to transfer sovereignty, or not transfer, we're going to share sovereignty of the nation, which will allow Aboriginal people to sit here and make decisions. Malcolm Fraser said that at the other end of on the other side of the table. And then when Malcolm Fraser did that, he said, "So, Lyle, let's imagine for 1 minute. I'm going to pass this across to you, and we've, all us fellows here on this side, signed on behalf of the Australian Government and said we now recognise Aboriginal sovereignty and we agree to share sovereignty." He said, and I passed that across to you. And he said to Lyle, "There it is." Yamming, he passed it over. And he said, "So, what if you blackfellas over on the other side there decide not to sign it, but you got our signatures on it? What happens then?" Lyle looked at him and he said, "You can call me Prime Minister then and you can walk out." Right? That's the seriousness of this. And they all knew that. Our people don't know that. Our people don't know where that's where we got. And so, with that, I want to end on just a couple of little things. Lyle was he was like my brother, a torment, a crazy, he had this funny little sense of humour. And he loved to laugh. He liked to make people laugh. And the first one he was telling me about, he said, Michael, he said, Tammy Fraser wanted all our women to come here. They brought them down here to have a barbecue over there at Government House, the Prime Minister's Lodge. He said, and you know what happened? He said, I know you were in Western Australia. He said, you know what happened? He said, they come over and he said, Carmine told me what happened. He said, I got a call. I had to go to the hospital, Canberra-based hospital. What happened? He said, well, they chartered this bloody plane for all these wives of all our NAC blokes, and they flew them down to Canberra. And when they flew them to Canberra, he said Carmine was asleep under the wing of that Fokker Friendship. And just as they were coming to land, they were circling, and he said Carmine woke up and seen that there flaps coming down from the wing and saw the wheels falling out underneath that wing coming down to land. And he said, and then all of a sudden Carmine said, oh, we're going to crash. The plane's crashing. He said, and they had ambulances lined up all along the footpath later on to pick up all these old women who fainted in that aeroplane. They were dragging them out on beds. Well, we realised then that that's why they put them on the buses back to Sydney rather than put them on another aeroplane. And there was just a final one. One of his colleagues had a wife who was very jealous. And we were sitting in the motel room one night, and Oz was there. And Oz said, they were sitting there, and this lad laying on the bed, and he got a telephone call. He said, oh, yeah, hello, my darling, how are you? Lyle sitting near the TV. And they said, I'm good, real good. Oh, I'm sitting there, and then Lyle sitting TV, and they turn it down. And this lad said, nah, only me and Ozzy and Michael and Lyle in the room, you're talking to me. Oh. And then all of a sudden this woman talked on TV, and Lyle turned that TV up really loud, and the woman's voice came up, and he turned it down real low again. And then I was watching the lad, and he said, laying on the bed, and he said, "No woman in here, mate. Does not woman. Get away from there, Lyle. Get away. You're going to get me divorced." Then he went on, and then that woman talked to him, and he turned it up again. "I told you there's no woman in this bloody room." And so the old fellow played a lot of tricks on us, and he did a lot of good things. He made us laugh, but he also had a seriousness about him. And one thing I just want to part and say, he's gone, but the fight hasn't. Help us keep that fight going.
Thanks, Mike. One of our tribute speakers today is a bloke known as Sugar Ray Robinson, lovely man. Unfortunately come ill, stuck up in Charleville on the Warrego River. But he sent a message through to us. He wants to say his piece and last farewells, and he's sent that through Uncle Oz. I'll call Uncle Oz back now, and he'll just I hope them coppers got that motorbike, or either take the keys off them.
Thanks, Champ. Within the NAC, there were, I think it's 35 members. And, you know, most of those members are gone now. But they were really strong men. And one of those men was Sugar Ray Robinson. And he sent this letter, and he sent it to me. He said, "Ozzy, please convey my condolences to his family, to Lyle's family." And I'm sure he means that too, because when you read his rest of his documents, as Lyle was, we all loved this man, all of us, and all 35 members. Even though he calls two great warriors out, Michael and Champ, he mentions them especially. But he does send his condolences. And he said, "I've been friends with Darby for 50 years. He always called, well, most of us knew Lyle as Darby. And I guess that was Darby Munro, with a jockey too. But in this time, during this period, he's known Lyle for 50 years. And we're very close friends. My fondest memory go back to the 80s. And it's just reaffirming what Michael said when he was chairman of the NAC, that's the National Aboriginal Conference, and of course Sugar was the deputy chairman then. And during that time, Chairman Darby pulled together that meeting with the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and no other national body has ever been able to achieve this since then. Malcolm Fraser was the Prime Minister at that time, and we met when we discussed the Makarrata. Makarrata was the title of a settlement that was taken from the Yurong language in the northern parts of Australia. But it meant that settlement after a dispute, and we saw that as something that really could be adopted in discussing with the government a treaty and changes to the laws. And so that was what Lyle was involved in, putting that together. And Michael Giller gave a really good description of that, what took place. And he said, I remember and he's going on to another. And I remember the time Darby and Ernie Crichton organised a march down the street in Moree. And within a short time, there were 300 or 400 people prepared to march. And I was proud on that day then. This is what Sugar's saying. And I was proud on that day. And Ernie and Darby always were arguing. I don't know why, what they're arguing about, but I wouldn't call it arguing, I'd call it reasoning. A lot of us Koreans do reason amongst each other. And so he said that they were arguing, but they were still good mates. I remember that the early days when me and Willie Clayton represented the NAC, and Lollymo Munro and Paul Coe represented NAILS. And we went to Geneva together, and the United Nations conference in the Australian government did not give us speaking rights, or they wouldn't give them speaking rights, because we were going there to say things about Australia that they didn't want the United Nations to know. When we approached the WCIP, that's the World Council of Indigenous People, because they were funded by the Australian government, they would not give us speaking rights. Now, I'm not really sure about that, funded by Australian government, but that's what Sugar saying here. Myself, Lyle, Lollymo and Paul Coe, Willie Clayton and Marcia Langton were standing outside of the conference when this bloke came up and he talked to us. And he said, Ray Robertson, and I turned around and I said, yes. He said, and I am from the IRA, that's the Irish Republic Army, and if you want speaking rights, we can give you speaking rights through the IRA. And as soon as the Australian government heard that, they came running and for us to speak through the WCIP, that's the World Council of Indigenous People. And the fellow from the IRA winked at me and said, I knew that would do the trick. And so then me and Lollymo and Paul Coe were the first Aboriginal to address the United Nations Working Group on Indigenous Populations. Later, when we look back, when we're coming back from Geneva, in London, Paul Coe came to my room 11 o'clock in the night, and when I opened the door, I said to him, what's up, brother? He said, I can't sleep. Lollymo's down here drinking with this IRA bloke, and telling the IRA fellas tell him all the secrets, and that I'm concerned that he might come and blow up our bedrooms. And he wanted me to go down and talk to Lollymo and try and appease this situation. And so then, this is Sugar talking. And on a lighter note, I remember we were meeting in Moree Town Hall, and I was there actually too. And Town Hall in Derby was the chair. I came to Moree from Charleville. Aussie Cruise came from the south coast, and Burnham came from Sydney. And Derby was then putting some bets on at the tab, and as he was going back and forwards to the tab, Lollymo said to him, come on, Dad, let's get this meeting on the road. And so Derby opened up the meeting and started to introduce the people. He said, Aussie Cruise from the south coast, Sugar Ray Robertson from Charleville. And then when he went to introduce Burnham, he said, this is Gattam. And well, Gattam was a racehorse apparently, and so he must have got mixed up there. That's what Sugar's saying, and he must have got mixed up because he was the one that won the Melbourne Cup way back in 1963, and so there's that, you know, probably this was on our beloved brother's mind. Once again, my condolences on behalf of the family and the community, and I can't imagine. And I can't either. Can't imagine Moree without a fella and without this man. May God bless you, and may peace and rest. May you rest in peace. God bless you. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call on the Honourable Adam Marshall, MP, representing the Premier of New South Wales, and on behalf of the Munro family, I want to show and thank the Premier's Department. This is a very great honour for the family and for the Aboriginal people. The state service has been provided. I think it's the first one in this country, in Gomeroi country, in Moree, for a state funeral. I'll now call on the member to say a few words on behalf of the Premier and himself.
Thank you, Philip. Her Worship, the Mayor of Moree Plains Shire, Councillor Katrina Humphries, the Honourable Linda Burney, MP, Commonwealth Shadow Minister for Family and Social Services, Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, representing the Federal Labor leader Anthony Albanese, as well as my state colleague, the Shadow Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Treaty, David Harris, and of course to the entire Munro family and everyone else here today. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we gather on today and pay my respects to elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people here today. It is truly for me an honour and a privilege not only to be present here today, but to represent the Premier of New South Wales. And she has asked me yesterday over the phone to convey her sincere and heartfelt condolences to all the family and friends of Uncle Lyle Munro Sr. as we carry out this sorry business today. As we all know, we have come here to mourn the passing of a great man and, in my view, an amazing Australian. And even as our hearts are heavy today, we do still gather to celebrate a lifetime of dedication, passion and achievements that have not only changed this community, but have changed this country for the better. Uncle Lyle, as you all know, was an incredibly proud and respected Gomeroi elder, and it was a responsibility he always took incredibly seriously. He was a fierce advocate and leader for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Uncle Lyle was tireless in his commitment to make life better for First Nations people here in Moree, across this region, New South Wales and Australia, and even, as we've heard already today, internationally. When Uncle Lyle joined the Freedom Rides in the mid-1960s, he was fighting then for what every Australian has the right to expect, and that is a fair go. Throughout his life, he campaigned for his people to get equal access to basic human rights, a good education, appropriate housing, and quality medical and legal services. He recognised that these are the foundation stones for better life outcomes for everyone. Before his people were even recognised as citizens of this country, in their own country, he was advocating for their independence and self-reliance. Such was his passion and resolve. His achievements are many and varied. You've heard many of those today, and you will hear many more later on in this service. But every single one of them has made a real and tangible difference to his people here in Moree and right across this country. Although it's a fair few decades before my time, Uncle Lyle's role in overturning the ban on Aboriginal children swimming in the then Moree swimming baths is legendary. This was about so much more than kids of different colours being allowed to play together. It marked a watershed moment in local and national race relations and a small but significant step towards equality here and further afield. Uncle Lyle was also a founding member of the committee that campaigned to have the Mile Creek Massacre and Memorial Site listed on the New South Wales State Heritage Register, a campaign that they were eventually successful in. This was very personal for him as a descendant of some of those victims of that terrible, terrible massacre. Historically, that site recalls the darkest and most brutal aspects of our country's history, a history that some just simply don't want to recognise. But today, thankfully, that memorial, that site, is a symbol of reconciliation, a place of learning, and a place where hundreds of people from this region and right throughout the state gather each year to remember the terrible events that occurred there in 1838. From the Freedom Rides to the Lands Rights Movement, Uncle Lyle was a charismatic and commanding leader. He was instrumental in the establishment of the New South Wales Aboriginal Legal Service, the Aboriginal Employment Strategy, and many local community-controlled organisations. He advised ministers, tackled horns with prime ministers, but most importantly, ensured that the voices of his people were heard and heard loudly, particularly in the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. With his integrity, his passion, his drive, he brought not only this community, but this country a long way down the road to genuine equality. We're still all travelling that road. But Uncle Lyle taught us that by working together, listening to and really hearing each other, not just listening but hearing what each other has to say, and being prepared to stand tall and be proud of what is right and fight for what is right, we can all make the future better than when we started. It's a proud legacy, it's an enormous legacy, and it's a legacy that we gather to honour here today, and it's a legacy we must all fight hard to continue.
The next part of the program is a very important one. We're now calling the son, Lyle Jr., to do the eulogy. Before Lyle comes up, I can sit here all day and tell you stories, but one of the stories that come about is when Uncle Oz and Lyle was on the advisory committee. I was still working with them then. Prepared all the letters, wrote all the letters out, and then started taking all the houses and building houses. And houses started popping up. You can see them around here. And some of the government officials got a bit upset about where all the houses are going and why they're going into these communities and how did they get there. And I said, well, they never come on the XPT, nor did they get them from Woolies or Coles. But those houses were fought by this man, and the man behind me put a roof over houses of a lot of people throughout New South Wales. So I now call on Lyle to say a few words.
Yeah, McGarrigle. Ooh. There's a bit of homework just to be cleared up, but however, I'm standing here and I'm reminded of the great James Baldwin, a great black American playwright, who, addressing a letter in support of Angela Davis in America in the Soledad prison, and he talked about victims, yeah. The victim that's able to articulate the situation of the victim ceases to be the victim. He becomes a threat. And I think that sums up all about Dad's life. And Dad became a threat. But before I go, just something we need to clear up here. A bit of homework. You may recall the Sydney Morning Herald article a couple of weeks ago that I think was an attempt to thwart the idea of the state privileging our Dad with the state funeral. I think it was a disgusting article. The suggestion that the Premier made the sudden decision is all wrong, because we were in negotiations with the Premier's department from day one. At no time did we sway from that path. We respect all those that encouraged the Premier to offer our Dad this state funeral. We accepted on the grounds that, with Dad being recognised in retrospect, that would show recognition to all Dad's comrades in arms that are not here, in particular the 60 Aboriginal staff and directors from the Aboriginal Legal Service alone. And that's an indication of the struggle and how the struggle has been dampened for the loss of some great people. I want to welcome you all here, those of you who travel many miles to be here with our family. You're very welcome. I've got some important calls from people who personally rang and offered their apologies from not being able to get here. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, just some apologies from some people who said they were coming. The first, of course, is Johnny Lewis, who was, surprisingly enough, freaked quite a few people out in this country when he said that Dad, amongst other people, was his hero. Johnny was unabashed about that. Justice Norris, Steve Norris, who was a solicitor with the ALS, was quite upset. He couldn't come. Justice Sides, Mark Sides, couldn't come. Ex-legal service solicitors that went on to bigger and brighter things in the legal fraternity. Sister Nolene Lever, Sugar Ray. Sugar Ray just had an operation. They removed a couple of his toes from Sugar. Sister Kay Belair, the wife of His Honour, Brother Bob Belair, still remains the patron of the Moree Boomerang Football Club. Brother Godfrey's not here, he's sick, but he's observing from far. Stephen Witters, the youngest ever councillor, was 18 when he won the council position up there in Armidale, which made Dad very proud. Stephen was sad that he couldn't get here. And of course, Kutcha Edwards family, the great Kutcha Edwards and the Edwards family from Victoria, of course, they're locked in. Henry Morris, the ex-chairman of South Sydney Juniors, and of course, Tugger Coleman. And only Maureen Salter rang this morning from Colonel Barabin and was sad that she couldn't get here. There's been some words here said about Dad. First of all, I want to acknowledge Paulie La Hood and the family down there that was given the privilege to be with us and to celebrate the life of our Dad. There's some dear friends here with Dads I'd like to acknowledge. One in particular, Doug McGrady, who has been a stalwart with Dad from the time they basically started in politicking throughout this country. There's a lot of other people that are not here. As I said, there's 60 staff and directors from the Aboriginal Legal Service alone. And they were tremendous people. The people that spoke here today epitomise the strength from those people that we're talking about. And like Philip suggested, politics is always going to be part of our presentation. I'm glad the Mayor turned up here today, who's somewhat of an enigma in this town. A councillor who had the intestinal fortitude to stifle the intervention and the basic card within a period of 6 weeks. A council that has stifled all mining in the Moree electorate, and that moratorium has still been fought by the state government. So we have an indication here that there's a great deal of strength in this town. It's emanated from people like the people that we're addressing, and it's emanated from people like Dad, and of course people like Uncle Ozzie Cruz. These people cannot be replaced in the struggle for the rights of our people, and I don't think there's ever been an attempt to replace them. They hold dear to our hearts. They've been very much a part of our family, and they'll stay being a part of our family until the dream time. Our Dad was born in Tingha in 1931 on the 30th of September, the son of Daniel Thomas Munro and Alice Selina Saunders Crichton. Dad's mum was born in this town in 1913. Dad's wife was born in this town, even though Dad wasn't born in this town. The Munros come from Tinga. Well, that's the popular consensus. But there is a story that suggests that two Munro brothers left this town many, many years ago and followed the white Munros down to Kira Station. In the process of driving between there and Bundarra and Tinga, met Great Granny Munro, Queen Mary Ann, who was their grandmother. And the strength of that woman is indicative of the strength of her descendants. And our grandfather, our great-grandfather, Jimmy Munro, was her son. And Auntie Susie Mo and them are here, and that's a great privilege. Dad was an Akuruma Comroy man, came to Moree when he was about 9-year-old, a bit earlier than that, lived at the top camp, and then the family left and went to Karababula for some time, I think 10, maybe 19 years. Karababula was a place where the Munro family were admired for who they were. I don't think the element of racism existed in that little town whilst ever the Munros were there. The people there speak highly of our family, the people from Karababula. In actual fact, when Dad and them left Karababula to come up to Moree, the sergeant of the police station called them in and gave them their dog licences, because the sergeant suggested where you were going to is a place where someone like you will need the recognition to be treated like a human being. The family, there's 9 of them. They lost 2 in the early stages, and Dad inherited the leadership of the family. I'd like to mention those that have survived: Aunt Daphne in Wagga, Uncle Norm, and of course Aunt Dort, Aunt Dorothy, who Dad was very proud of. His sister was the first Aboriginal woman, and Uncle Ted were the first Aboriginal people in this country to be awarded a liquor licence of a hotel. Dad was proud of the fact that some 10 years after they became the first ever Aboriginal people to be awarded the licence to a hotel. Our family's got some of those important traits that we like to hold on to. Being the first in some areas is very important, I think. Never thought I'd get to this stage, actually, but it's here, so we've got to deal with it, yeah. They had a major influence in most of the areas that they went to. They came back up here via the Doom Boys there at Delungra. Arrived up here, back in Moree. Dad was a 19-year-old young fella, was the assistant station master in the town. And on reflection, I think that was an achievement in itself, that a young Murray man in those early days could become the assistant station master here. Dad's influence is relevant, it's evident by those people who rang their apologies through, by the attendance of people here from all over the country, by the phone calls that we've received during this sad time in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And it's evident that Dad's influenced some incredibly gifted people, and 2 in particular were the judges that I spoke about. Mum and Dad met up when they were young, re-met in Gunnedah. Dad was doing a bit of fighting at the time from Tamworth Police Boys Club. Mum was chasing Dad before that, but this time she nailed him at Gunnedah. Said he wouldn't get away from from her ever again, which he never. And Dad tells the story where the sergeant of the police station rode him over in the motorbike, and Mum was on that motorbike that night back to Karababila. And as they say, the rest is history. And Mum, Jenny asked me last night, name one of the good things that I remember about Dad. And the best thing I remember about Dad is Mum. Because whenever we talk about Dad, we talk about Mum. Yeah. Dad comes from a family who were very strong, evident by the respect that's been shown here today. Dad was saddened by the loss of his brothers and sisters, in particular his young brother, Uncle Bruce. He was saddened by the passing of Aunt Pam, Aunt Nola, and it left a big hole in Dad's heart. And I think that hole grew when we lost Mum. Yeah. I don't think Dad ever recovered from that time. And I guess most of us won't recover from that time. Mum and Dad had 12 children. I stand here as the eldest son and the second of the family. We then took on the responsibility of 7 others. Brother Harold, Sambo, Budger, Ringside, and Rocky and Jeff became very much a part of our families, and so were their families, became very much a part of our family. We've heard a lot today about Dad, but I finally remember the first time Dad got involved in Aboriginal affairs. It was through the Mission School P&C Association, which became the advancement group here in the town. One of their first struggles was to try and stop the introduction of the water coming from town down to the mission, when they decided for some unknown reason that our water, after all that time, water that was examined by international scientists and classified 99%, almost 99% mineral water, the council arrived one day and classified it unfit for human consumption. So there went our water on the mission, and the town water was brought down and hooked up there near the school. That was the first struggles that Dad and the P&C Association was involved in this town. And of course, the influences that people have spoken about, the 67 referendum in particular. Charlie arrived in 65, long before, the referendum in 67, but the Freedom Ride was a major influence on that the referendum in 67. The time from 67 to 1970 became a void where a lot of information disappeared, but during the early 70s, the state government enacted the Aboriginal Lands Trust, which was the first Aboriginal statutory body representing the voice of Aboriginal people in this state. They, in actual fact, had some real grasp on what land rights is all about, because they inherited the missions at the time. I think there was 113 missions that were handed over to the Aboriginal Lands Trust. The Aboriginal Lands Trust controlled those Aboriginal missions right up until the advent of the legislation in 1983. And that land, 113 missions total, something like 17.5 thousand hectares. So the Land Council controlled that land until the legislation in 1983, and that was a sad day at the office there. The legal service turned up there. We stayed there in the struggle until the Land Council was put out of the office. And from the Land Council, Dad then went on to be a member of the National Aboriginal Consultative Conference Committee, which was then abbreviated into the NAC, the National Aboriginal Conference. He served as the Vice Chairman on the NAC and also as the Chairman on the finalisation of the NAC, when the NAC then grew into the ATSIC body. Dad served as the Regional ATSIC Chairman and also as a member of the National ATSIC Executive. was quite famous for his many arguments with Sister Lois O'Donoghue, and was famous for his arguments with most anyone that stood in the way of their dream to bring about changes for the lives of our people. Our family have inherited this title, and our family will continue to take our part in the front line of the struggle for the rights of our people. Mum had a major influence in Dad's life. For those of you who know the story, from 34 Meai into 108 Guida, it's an incredible story, it's a gifted story, it's full of love. It's where we see a man is completely dependent on a woman, you know, and that woman is completely dependent on that man. And that's how they were. They complemented one another like I've never witnessed. Mum left us when she was 79, just before the turning 80, you know, and then Dad, you know, left us at the age of 99, some 10 years later. Dad's been very much an influence on our lives. Was honoured to be the Second Life member of the famous Boomerang Rugby League Football Club. And that honour was awarded to him by Godfrey Swan, the coach at the time. Godfrey also was the one who awarded Pa his life membership, and also Uncle Bruce their life membership. So there's three of them there. Uncle Bruce and Dad in particular were involved in the establishment of the organisations, along with the rest of us, the Aboriginal Legal Service here and the Aboriginal Housing Companies, and had a big influence in the Aboriginal Medical Service there. And they also served on the Moree District Hospital for a time, and of course their influence is still there because of the way that things have changed, not as much drastically as we'd like them, but things have been changing. And that's due to the efforts of people like Dad and Mum and those who were prepared to stand in the front line of the struggle. Dad loved his family, was very concerned about his family, was proud of his family, and that's a big family, was proud of the efforts of his family, and was proud of all those that were involved and had an influence in our lives. You know, Mission Tough, you know, the bugs and the fleas, Top Camp, fleas and the mission bugs have always been a part of our lives. Mum was born at the Top Camp, you know. Dad's had a lot of influence from Top Camp people, the elders there, and the elders from the mission. My particular respects go out to our elders. As you can see, I'm getting a bit balls up here. However, such a big history to cram into such a short space of time. But I want to thank my nephew Keith Munro, Kip, whose efforts brought about this day. I want to thank my family and tell my family that I love them, irrespective of what's been going on, and that I understand that losing someone like Dad, someone that we've had for such a long time in our lives, unfortunately a lot of you people never had your dads and mums for as long as we did, and we can empathise with you and we stand with you. And our love and condolences go out to all of you who've lost family here in the last year, and all those of you that have lost families in the last 15 years. You know, and we've always spoken about this, the need to bring attention to what's going on in this town, the need to bring attention to the rates of cancer-related deaths in this town. We lose 40 a year with cancer-related deaths. We have for the last 15 years, some 27 to date. The crisis impeded a lot of that and added to the heartache. We saw 11 families here in Moree undergo funerals that only 10 people could attend. So the crisis has affected us, but not to the stage where we become paranoid, you know, not to the stage where the paranoia is affecting our lives like it is affecting this country, you know, and I think a great deal of common sense should prevail, because quite frankly, I can't see any people You know, the most vulnerable people that we're talking about here with this crisis, I can't see, and I don't know any of us that have had the COVID-19 virus. So there's a story there, there's a narrative there that I think should be looked in. Maybe we have some sort of a resistance to it. I doubt that, but it's quite possible. We seem to be growing some sort of a resistance to the effects of cotton because we have survivors as well as we have losers, and that's quite incredible when you think about it. But Dad influenced a lot of these areas, a lot of these concerns, a lot of these discussions that surrounded these areas that were important to the lives of our people. He travelled abroad. Philip and Michael were very much with him in the journey with the statutory bodies. Sugar talked about our endeavours there in Geneva in the United Nations in 83 and 84. That was quite an experience. Studying there in Strasbourg, in France for a while, that was an experience. Dad was pretty wrapped in that. Mum was pretty wrapped in that. The role that we played, Dad was also instrumental in bringing the WCIP conference, the World Council of Indigenous Peoples conference, to Canberra, the very last one of its size. It had UN status. The United Nations recognised the status of WCIP, and Dad, fortunately enough, became the very last chairman of that international body. So, you know, people like Dad have influenced the international arena. They've taken our struggle from this country into other countries throughout the world. I remember, for those who want to check your history, the person that we're talking about, China at the moment. China seems to be on the minds of everyone at the moment, and paranoid Australia. But I have to remind people that the first delegation that was invited to China comes from this town. The first ever delegation, besides countries in the world, that was invited to China was led by Lynn Thompson, Lynn Craigie, and Gary Foley. And I think that's a milestone in itself. You know, Brother Billy Craigie, you know, this town, you have your heroes in this town, you know. We don't need to go anywhere outside of this town. Your heroes in this town have influenced the politics of this country. Your heroes in this town have influenced the goodwill, you know, of the rights of Aboriginal people in this country. You know, and it's about time we started looking at this town and the problems that we have. I think the country can let us alone for a while, give us time to look at the situation as prevails here in this town. It's a very sad situation. It's not what the frontliners fought for. You know, it's certainly not what Cheeky died for. And I think with a big effort, I think the important people in this town can rectify that and bring some stability and some common sense in particular to our people and the heartache in this town. You know, I don't know what it's like for the rest of you, but when you lose 40 people a year for 10 to 15 years and the government just doesn't take notice, it becomes, it starts setting in on your conscience and your makeup. And, you know, it's sad because, you know, they talk about our young people in this town. Well, I call it trauma, you know, and our people have held this trauma since the invasion. And that's what it's called. It's called trauma. Forget about all these other ideas about what's wrong with our people. You know, it all emanates from trauma. And this town's had its fair share of trauma, and this town's had a fair share of its race relations and its differences in race relations. But I think with the people that are now in positions in the town, I think something can come out of the efforts of people like Dad. Yeah, I don't want to hold you anymore, other than to say that thank you all very much for coming. It's an honour to have you all here. Be careful and be safe travelling home. And yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, yeah.
Get in there with it. We haven't been evicted. What's going to happen now is that we're going to reflect the life now. We're going to do a slide on the, and as soon as our elders are off the, we'll move forward. Thanks, Lyle. Thanks very much for that presentation. We now want to reflect on life's life as we look back at up the screens in a moment. There's a display of photos and a song of, I can't give me word around this one, Curra Bubula, that's the one, by Dusky Rankin.
I was gazing from the window of the northbound railroad car when I saw that lazy car above Beulah. It's a sleepy little hollow, only one store and a bar, but I dips my lid to car above Beulah. Oh, how many times have I heard my dad tell the family of the times he had. In the days of hoof and leather, people came from near and far just to spend their dough at Caraba Beulah. And he wasn't wrong by far when he said that this indeed was Shangri-La. There's a welcome in the air that you don't find everywhere, so I guess I'll leave the northbound railroad car and settle down at Caraba Beulah. Lay-o-loo, lay-o-loo-dee, lay-o-loo, lay-o-loo-dee, lay-o-loo, lay-o-loo-dee, lay-o-loo-lee-lay. In the days of cobbin coaches, long before the motor car, it was quite a place, this Caraba Beulah. People rode for 50 miles then just to see the church bazaar. It was quite a show at Caraba Beulah. But you couldn't say that this lonely place was all peace and quiet, made of silk and lace. There was blood and bullets flying at the local public bar every Saturday at Caraba Beulah. And my old granddad told a story that a bush ranger shot a hole right through his hat. They were making history back in 1893, but the folk here now don't boast of blood and scar. They've settled down at Caraba Beulah.
Some, just some. Way more than this. Okay, I'll just get me little. Okay.
Got a few words from our grannies, grandchildren. There you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Donna in Moree, Donna Michelle, never without the Michelle in Moree. I'm Lyle Munro Senior's second eldest granddaughter, second eldest grandchild. I speak today on behalf of Laura and myself and all of the grandchildren, and just want to try to convey to all of you today how we feel about our grandfather, who we call Farfy. I've got two pieces here to read. I guess I just want to say, as grandchildren, like, we have a different relationship with our grandparents than we do with our parents. I suppose, you know, parents and children, we're all a bit more critical of each other, we expect more of each other, but with grandparents, they're, I don't know, they're just there. They're just there to love you. Don't worry too much about disciplining you, but just to love you and to keep you with the faith that you're gonna do all right. So when a grandparent passes, they take a part of you, whether big or small. When you were younger, you planned out life with them. You shared your dreams with them, your insecurities, your childish ways, and most of all, you shared your love. They in turn taught you lessons about life. They helped you realise those dreams and never let you go without being told you were loved. Every single time they saw you, you were loved. They are the suppliers of happiness, security, and laughs. Friends come and go, but your family stays with you forever. I guess for Laura and I, we're hitting the 50s. To be as fortunate as we've been to have only recently lost our grandfather, to have grandparents in our lives for most of our adult lives, and to have had Farfy for nearly 50 years, I think is such a privilege, and there's not many others who are that fortunate. So, and now that we're all grown up, even down to Jackie boy, we're all grown up, we're all adults now. And I guess this is the way that for us, we don't worry about Farfy's status, where he was, you know, how much money he made, any of that. Those things weren't important to us. This was what was more important to us. The measure of a man. Not how, sorry. Come on. I can't see it. Can you get that for me, cuz? Yeah, I just can't.
Which one?
This one here.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, cancel.
Oh, it's terrible. That's it. Okay. Sorry, people. Oh, truly. There. The measure of a man. Not how did he die, but how did he live. Not what did he gain, but what did he give. These are the units to measure the worth of a man as a man regardless of birth. Not what was his standing, but had he a heart, and how did he play his God-given part. Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer to bring back a smile or banish a tear? Not what was his church, nor what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need. Yes, this is the man we honour today. See how many of us are sorry that he passed away. Okay. So yeah, on behalf of all of us as the grandchildren, thank you all for coming. Thank you for all your support. For me personally, I guess one thing I really remember Farfy teaching me was to pick my battles, even down to when he'd pocket dial me and refused to believe that he rang me. I gave up after the first 2 times and just decided to make something up when he'd say, "What do you want?" So, yeah, thank you, Farfy, for teaching me to pick the battles, because they're not all worth it. Some are important, and that's certainly what I learnt, and I think that's what we all learn. So, thank you.
Hello,
I just hijacked this gathering of, my sister, my older sister, my other sisters, my niece, because I thought it was relevant. I just really, really wanted to talk about black love, the strength of it, the fact that these two people, my grandparents, came together and created more than 220 descendants. These are survivors of massacres. These are survivors of 250 years of genocide. So I thought it was only right to read a poem I thought it was only right to try to remember a poem. So bear with me. But before I do that, I just wanted to share with everybody, the first thing that Fafi said to my son's father when he met him, sitting on the lounge when we drove 9 hours up from Sydney. Introduced him, all that sort of stuff, and then he said, well, mate, you too can have a body like mine within 4 days, which I thought was hilarious. He also made comment about how far my son's father had travelled for love. And I just wanted to remind everybody how far these two, how far their love has gotten them. It's evident here today with all of us. We are a representation and manifestation of their love and all of our ancestors before. So I'll leave you with this poem. Red, luck, love, passion, aggression and war. Red-stained earth, crime scene, blood-stained floor. Ruby red lips, red, the planet's core. Stop, warning, danger to all. Red, the colour of sunsets and roses, embraces, kisses and Shakespearean sonnets and prosas. Red, the colour of summer, yabbies freshly cooked, juicy and fat. Red, the colour of a tourist's sunburnt back. Red bark trees, red waratah, red stop signs, mischief and anarchy. Yellow, fire, substance, ever a luminous source of energy. School bus, yellow walk sign, radiation, yellow cake. We are the children of the sun and we will decide our own fate. Created by love, breathing against hate. Yellow is a colour Picasso couldn't even make. Prisoners in concentration camps wore yellow armbands. Now these same people hold a monopoly over politically divided lands. Yellow ochre, provider of life, rolling dunes and shifting sands. Wattles, daisies and daffodils bounded by unprovoked hands. Lemon, salt and tequila, lemon chicken, lemon and lion. Spineless, yellow-bellied, frill-neck lizard and waster of time. Black space, fade to black, rewind. Black leather, black lace, black shoes and black tie. Little black dress, clear black night sky. Black spray across the clouds. Bats regrouped and fly high. Misery, spiritually gifted, even gothic. Our society puts black before the name of the day to commemorate an event that was catastrophic. Black, the colour of the oppressed, also the colour of sophistication, fine suit and pressed. Black power, black coffee, black tar. Fertile black soil. Black gold. Black tie, digging for oil. Black queens, Carmine, Nefertiti, Truganini and Mum Shell. Black, the colour worn by priests of the highest esteem in ancient Greece. Black symbol on white paper equals peace. Black Friday, A-Day, a whole black week. You stay white there, I'll be black. The beat up on colour exposes the flaws in an argument that was slack. Black forever under attack, the quintessential underdog. Simple as that. I was told that black was a shade and not really a colour at all. For people, colours mean many things. For me, they mean much more. These colours define me my whole life long, and they remind me ever so rightly that we do belong. Thank you.
All the grandchildren. I don't think if Godfrey's not here today, but I tell you what, I just heard something. He got 250, was it, grandchildren? I say to Godfrey, he hasn't got a problem with the football team for the knockout. I'd like to call on Father Paul McCabe. Father's been around for a while, and he's been asked by the family to do a reading.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, escorted by all the angels, then he will take his seat on the throne of glory. All the nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate men one from another as shepherds separates sheep from goats. He will place the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right hand, 'Come, you whom my Father has blessed. Take for your heritage the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you made me welcome. Naked, and you clothed me. Sick, and you visited me. In prison, and you came to see me.' And then the virtuous will say to him in reply, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and make you welcome, naked and clothe you, or sick, or in prison and go to see you?' And the king will answer, 'I tell you solemnly, insofar as you did this to one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did it to me.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Thank you, Father. Walla Walla might come soon, but I think we'll get it all in. Okay, we're going to keep going anyway. I'd like to bring to the stage now a group of ladies, beautiful ladies, that's going to perform a special song, the Newman Sisters.
Good morning, everybody. Just on behalf of the Newman family today, we'd just like to give our condolences to the Munros, extended families, and it was honoured to know Uncle Lyle, and it was his request that we sing today for him, and I just pray God's blessings upon you today, and may you have a wonderful day today, even though it's a sad occasion, but we know where he's gone. When you finally make your entrance to that city of just the walls and bright golden avenues, as you behold all its beauty and its splendor, remember there's just one request
maybe to look for me, for I will be there too. As you go down your list of first, there's no question you want to see many loved ones waiting there for you. And when you feel you shared your stories with the last ones that wants to hear you tell just how you made it through, look for me, for I will be there too. Though I realize when you arrive, there'll be so much to do after you've been there 10,000 years, a million, maybe two. Look for me, for I will be there too. Just look for me, for I will be there too.
Beautiful song sang by some beautiful young ladies. Now I'd like to call to the stage the Mayor of Moree. Sorry.
Thank you, Philip, and I'd like to offer my sincere condolences to the entire Munro family and also all the friends who've gathered here for this magnificent service today. I'd also like to show my respect to the traditional owners, the custodians and our elders, past, present, and so many that are here today of the future. Lyle Munro Senior was a man dedicated to his beliefs. He was also an articulate man and a great orator, with a sincere passion for his extended Aboriginal family. We often know of people just by their Christian name, a wonderful way to show respect, and Lyle Senior is one of those such people. Everyone, from locals to politicians Australia-wide and further, knew who Lyle Senior was. With the exception of family, Lyle's advocating for a fairer deal for Aboriginal Australia was his total focus. Well, that and the Boomies. The Moree Boomerangs football team rarely played without Lyle Senior cheering them on from the sidelines. Lyle Senior worked closely with 3 Prime Ministers and in the mid-60s had been very proactive with the famous Freedom Rides with his lifelong friend and associate, Mr. Charlie Perkins. This was a time when division was rife and unacceptable, and the push for total Aboriginal recognition was high on the agenda, and rightly so. In later years, Lyle Senior was instrumental in the establishment of the Mile Creek Massacre Memorial Site, a site that now stands tall and proud to remind everyone of a tragic time in history and to acknowledge the massacre of 1838, a site where many locals, dignitaries and visitors alike show their respect annually. While Lyle Senior was watching out and advocating for Aboriginal rights throughout Australia, he was also loving and enjoying very much his expanding family with Carmine, affectionately known as Maggie, She was by his side for 5 generations of offspring. His Boomies football team, as he was a long-time life member and vocal supporter as well as a motivator. Lyle Senior also loved his horses, particularly one called Kamilaroi. And on a personal note, something that resonates in my mind, as Lyle and I had many conversations when we had a tab agency in town. And I was having a bit of quandary one day as to which horse I was going to back. And this still resonates with me when I'm still trying to decide, and I think of Lyle's words of wisdom. Winning form is good form. Lyle Senior was also fostering and encouraging a change right here within Moree. With health initiatives, he was an active board member for the Moree Hospital and also for the St Pius X Aboriginal Corporation Health Services. He was very interested in the river beautification and housing programs. He's also mentoring many young people to make sure that they pursued a tertiary education. Lyle Senior succeeded to instil an understanding of Aboriginal issues in Moree and across Australia. We are blessed with a wonderful gallery of photographs of Lyle Senior. He was a fascinatingly photogenic man. He had a twinkle in his eye and he had an air of confidence, and he was usually wearing his trademark hat. Rest in peace, Lyle Munro Senior, for you are an elder to all Australians.
We're going back to the screen now for another reflection. You all right?
They say I'm getting older and my hair is turning grey. They say I should be slowing down and give it all away. Living like a gypsy doesn't bother me at all, and I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Now I could have been a shearer, and I could have been a vet. Could have been a lot of things, but this much you can bet. A man can sit there hanging like a picture on the wall, but I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Oh, I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. All my life I had a go and really had a ball. If you don't climb the ladder, mate, then you can never fall. And I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Hey. When I look at that old suitcase and I think of how it was, the bad times and the good times, and we did it just because. I know I had to try it, and today I'm standing tall, 'cause I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Now you won't reach the finish line if you don't ever start. You'll never live and you'll never love if you don't have a heart. So don't just sit there whinging, mate, it's no damn good at all. And I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Oh, I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. Give it everything I've got, really had a ball. And if you don't climb the ladder, mate, then you can never fall. And I'd sooner be a has-been than I never was at all. and I'd sooner be a has-been than a never was at all. Oh-de-day, oh-de-day, oh-de-day.
Here we go, Slim Dusty. We right to go? Set to go. I'd like to bring to the stage now a very dear friend of Lyle's over the years. This portfolio of employment is a big thing, and back in the 70s, he was one of his portfolios, along with housing, was employment. I'd like to bring to the microphone now Dick Eston.
Thank you. Firstly, I acknowledge that we're all on Kamilaroi land today, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. We're all here this morning to reflect on the life of Lyle Munro, a national Aboriginal leader and elder. My condolences go out to the Munro family and the Kamilaroi Nation, for they have lost a great warrior today who was flying high above us. Lyle, I'm honoured to have met and known you, a thinking leader, a good storyteller who I have known for the last 40 years since moving to Moree. He loved this town, its people, both black and white, its strengths and weaknesses, its troubled history as he fought for greater human rights and a better outcome for his people. His wise counsel will now be greatly missed. We always had an unofficial agreement. We trusted each other. He defended my back in the black world and I defended his on the white side. We got things done. For me, Lyle always had the unique ability to pave the way. My first official meeting working with Lyle was on the Moree Hospital Board in the late 1980s. That was until we all got sacked by Bob Carr. He thought his New South Wales bureaucrats, sad to say, could do a better job than us. I next found myself working with him as a member of one of the 7 Aboriginal Employment Promotion Committees set up in New South Wales after the Royal Commission of Deaths in Custody in 1992, to which he had been a contributor. This then led to working with Lyle for the successful development of the Aboriginal Employment Strategy, a national Aboriginal-owned and managed non-profit company which today has placed well over 23,000 Aboriginal people in jobs around Australia. The AES has now built a career pathway for many young Aboriginal people, nationally into governments, farming, businesses, health and the services, and now the corporate world, finally allowing Aboriginal people to live their dreams and build great hope for their futures and contribute to the economic development of this great nation as Australia's first peoples. The AES school-based trainee model was a game changer, engaging in the 4 major Aboriginal banks, employing young Aboriginal kids at the end of Year 10, working 1 day a week plus during their skill holidays. These kids would finish Year 12 with a diploma in financial literacy. It was a great starting line on their resumes, better than McDonald's. As I said earlier, this was a game changer for Aboriginal people in Australia, an entry into the corporate and business world. This model gave kids the ability to live their dreams and a reason to finish Year 12. The program would not have succeeded in the way that it has without Lyle's support, experience and guidance along the way. A lasting highlight I'll always remember with Lyle was brainstorming with him then and his sister about placing the S back into Blacktown while establishing 3 AES offices in Sydney in 2005. The original S had been removed in the early part of the 20th century. Blacktown, Aboriginal Employment Strategy, the Moree mob had arrived. It caused an uproar. People then knew where we were and success followed. This was about taking a community-grown model that worked from the country to the city to engage with the corporate world of bigger business. We had a plan and then we delivered on it. The company was built and has been successfully managed in the last 23 years by Aboriginal people, building pride, passion and commitment, then following a line in Lyle's life and never give up attitude. Challenging people, creating change was his game. Land rights, social justice, equality, The good thing about Lyle was he held no anger and celebrated change. He did not hate wise and smart leadership, always the story. He led a full, rewarding life fighting for his people. Lyle Munro, Australia and Moree will remember you. And I thank the Munro family for asking me to speak today at Lyle State Funeral. He was a good mate. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick. Now we're going to move on to a very important subject in Lyle's life, is the Myall Creek Massacre. We're going to have two speakers. Sue Blacklock and the Reverend John Brown.
Yama Malay, which means welcome friends. You know, I'd like to say about my cousin Lyle. He was a brother. He was born in Tingha. And Lyle's life, you know, he always, every time I seen him, he always spoke about Tingha. And it was an honour and a privilege to have him stand side by side at the Myall Creek Memorial, to come on board and to help us establish the committee. And a big support he was to us. And he meant to the Tingha mob, as he always called us, his Tingha mob. I bring our condolences, our prayers and our blessings today from the Munros, Tingha Munros, to the Moree Munros. We Munros, we are a big family. So our condolences go to you. But as I said, he was a great support and he meant a lot to us. He always used to support us if we wanted anything. He was always there. The last time I seen him, he was very sick at the last memorial service we had, but he came. Nothing stopped him from coming to celebrate and to establish the reconciliation between the perpetrators and the families of Myall Creek Massacre. So it's a privilege to be here today to say farewell, my brother. You're going to be missed, and my condolences go out to all your family. Thank you.
My sincere sympathy to the family and friends of Lyle Munro. We honour today the life of a long-time advocate for the recognition of the rights of Aboriginal people. Since the 1980s, the Uniting Church has been putting some effort into the recognition of the true history of relations between Aboriginal people and the newcomers to this land. The Church appointed me to work on the issues in the 1980s. And having travelled around the country and met Aboriginal people in every place around the country, I reported back to the committee, which included Sue, I think we ought to visit one of these massacre sites and see what it does to our relationship, where it takes us. And Sue said, why don't you come to Myall Creek? That's where my ancestors were massacred. So we decided to come. We met at Myall Creek over a weekend. Lyle joined us there. I remember him saying at that meeting, "This has always been a bad place for Aboriginal people since the massacre in 1836. Today, you have opened it for us. We would always speed down this road and never stop here. But today, you have made it possible for us to stop and think together." We formed a committee of Aboriginal people and others to begin to plan a memorial. We decided that there had to be a memorial which would honour the people who were massacred there and acknowledge the true history of what has happened between us latecomers to this country and Aboriginal people. So we began planning. Lyle joined us, and he became co-chair of that committee. And so over 20 years, we have built a memorial there to the massacre, but it has become much more than that. It has become a memorial to all the massacres that occurred all over the country. And now hundreds of people join us each year to remember and to commit ourselves to a more just relationship in the future and to reconciliation between our peoples. Few people had so much reason to be bitter towards the newcomers to Australia. Few gave so much to heal the relationships. Today, we honour Lyle and thank God for him. Thank you, Lyle. Thanks be to God.
We're just about to come to the end of the program, but there's a few matters that we just need to... I'm just going to call on Kip now. Kip has been the backbone to this service. He worked tirelessly over the days, and I want to just ask him to come forward. And you've got a couple of thank yous you want to make.
It'd be remiss of the family to not just mention this before we head over to undertake the final business of the day, to just acknowledge and thank everyone that has helped contribute to making today happen. And we, on behalf of the family, first and foremost, we'd really like to send our love and our gratitude to all the staff at the Dian Centre. They've worked and have gone above and beyond. The staff at MIA, BIRA, PICE 10, a lot of the other Aboriginal community organisations that have helped with the wake. It's taken a lot of strain off the family. We are grieving, we are hurting, and I just really want to thank you all for being able to help us with the planning of today. Thank you.
Thank you. We now call on Father to do the final blessing.
We bless you, Father, for bringing us to this day. You are the Lord, the creator of the universe, and all time belongs to you. You speak the word and all things come into being, and you breathe your spirit into us and create us in your own image. We bless you for our brother Lyle, to whom you have given such gifts of grace and nature. We thank you for his love, his courage, his resilience, for his sense of justice and passion for the truth, for his compassion for the poor and the sick, the downtrodden and the imprisoned. We commend him to you, Lord, for he has run the race to the end. He has fought the good fight to the finish. He has been a faithful and true image of you in the world. We come now to lay his body in the country which enshrines the bones of his ancestors. Bless us, Father, with a deeper understanding and vision of your presence in this land. For thousands and thousands of years, generations after generations, have walked this country softly and respectfully, listening deeply to the mystery by which you hold all things in being. Today, Bayami, we call on you in the language of the Gummaluroi people. For you, Bayami, are the creator spirit of the dreaming. Give us your blessing as we lay our brother in the land he loved. Bless us with something of his spirit. Teach us to listen deeply to your word which comes to us from the dreaming. Fill our hearts with a longing for justice, for truth, and for love. Give us the wisdom and courage to work together for reconciliation, for justice, for the common good. May our celebration today bring us together as sisters and brothers, willing to work together to achieve the ideals for which our brother Lyle has given his life. And Father, we make this prayer through Christ our Lord.
Thanks, Father. I'd now like to call a lifetime friend to the stage and a legend in his own right, Roger Knox.
I would like to say on behalf of my family, myself, pass on the condolences to the Munro family. And I'd like to do this beautiful little song and dedicate it to one of the greatest black fellas ever walked. And I just wish we had a little bit more time to sit and talk and listen to him speak, because we've learned so much. I have learned so much from him over the years, and we just wish the younger people, or the many people, would have had that little bit more time to sit down and listen to Uncle Lyle. But as we gathered here at this particular ground, at this time, where his heart was and his people still is, and this same ground where he would have often sat and watched his beloved Boomerangs razzle-dazzle just about any opponent that come up before them. The same ground that his people that feet had trodden for thousands of years. The same ground, the sacred mother of us all. I'd just like to say, may you forever rest in peace, Uncle Lyle Munro. Where am I first born, said the proud man silent. Came out of my womb long time ago. warmed up my dust. But why was they crying? Now the light of their being barely aglow. You are silent, you cling from replying. You're lying. Where are the laws and the legends I gave? Tell me what happened to you whom I bore after. Now only their spirits dwell in their cave. I strain my ears for the sound of their laughter. My question is there like a blow on your face? The answer is there when I look at the dying, at the death and neglect of my dark proud place. The answer is there when I look at the dying, at the death and neglect of my dark proud place. At the death and neglect of my dark proud place. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. It's now time. Can I ask everybody if they can be upstanding, and if you can move down, because we're not letting Uncle Lyle go until we do a chant, okay? We need a land rights chant, so it's going to be happening today before he goes. So if everybody can come in and join near the family, and I'll call all the pallbearers at the front. Well, part of the tradition of our services, I just want to now pay our last respects before we take our brother away. And I'm calling on everybody now is to follow my lead and call for land rights, eh? So what do we want? Land rights! What do we want? Land rights! When do we get it? What do we get? Here we go. One more time. What do we want? Land rights! What? Land rights! What do we want? Land! What do we want? Land rights! What do we want? Land! Hey! What do we want? Land rights! What do we got? Oh, there we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I walked 3 miles up the road today, and the stones, they bruised my little pride. 'Cause we can't afford to buy new shoes. We scrape up just enough to survive. With no money, bare feet not a penny to bless yourself with. Oh, the times were tough, with not much to go around. No money, bare feet in a small town. Mama and all her sisters played cards in the afternoon. Now I just stood still that summer. We lost Aunt Virginia around the August moon, so I laid a small bouquet down on her. With no money, bare feet in a small town, not a penny to bless yourself with. Oh, the times were tough, with not much to go around. No money, bare feet in a small town. I watched my grandparents grow before my eyes to make way for a generation. I'd sit and listen to the stories that they told. We made room for exaggeration. With no money, bare feet in a small town, not a penny to bless yourself with. Oh, the times were tough, with not much to go around. No money, bare feet in a small town. My mother's leaning on that old veranda post. She's crying, 'cause I'm leaving home today. It makes me numb, because we are so close, and not that far from yesterday. With no money, bare feet in a small town, not a penny to bless yourself with.